Hey, welcome back to Astronomy with Josh. Happy belated holidays. It's been madness over here, but I got a new video coming out that I think you guys are really like. We're building some in the garage. In the meantime, if Santa brought you a new telescope, let's learn how to use it. Alright, so you got a new scope, and maybe you've taken it outside and you're like, I can't see anything. And this is a big, frustrating time of year for a lot of people getting started with observing the beautiful universe that we live in, and it really doesn't have to be that hard. Now, there's a lot of great videos on YouTube, but I want to give you my special take how it goes. So before we go outside and start using a telescope, I want to show you how it kind of works. So this is a classic type of telescope. This is a refracting telescope, and it uses this lens right here. This was my first scope. Thanks, Uncle Joe, back in Christmas in 1999, I think. So it uses a lens to bend the light, and then it hits what's called a star diagonal. How's that for a poetic name? It's got a little mirror right in there, which just reflects the light 90 degrees up. Now, we can't really do a whole lot with this because the light's not, it's still diverging or something fancy like that. So we put in what's called the eyepiece right there, and then we can use our focuser to focus the image. Ta-da! Now, how do we know where it's pointed? That's why we got to use what's called a finder scope. Looking through the telescope is like looking at the sky through a drinking straw, and it's really hard to aim. So you usually put one of these little fellows on here. This is called a finder scope. When I was little, I was like, I want a telescope with a double telescope. And you look through that, and that has a much wider field of view, and it usually has crosshairs, so you feel like you're going to blow the moon right out of the sky. Sometimes you can use, where did I put it? Sometimes they come with a little red dot. If you're into firearms, this would be like a zero power sight or a reflex sight, and it just projects a red dot or bullseye on the sky like that. So these are the parts of the telescope. Now a word about eyepieces. I'm a musician, and they say music and math is related in the brain, and I have yet to see that. So we'll keep this super simple. If I can understand it, so can you. To understand the magnification of the telescope, you got to do some division, but it's pretty easy. You divide the focal length of the telescope, that's in millimeters usually, how long it takes the light to focus. In this case, it's 400 millimeters, by the focal length of the eyepiece. So this is a 25 millimeter eyepiece. 16 times? Is that what that is? So let's make it easy. If I had a 40 millimeter eyepiece, it would be magnifying 10 times. 40 into 400 goes in 10. If I was a 20 millimeter eyepiece, it'd be magnifying 20 times. 10 millimeter would be 40 times, and so on and so forth. Now, you usually think, oh boy, I want to knock that moon right out of the sky and use the most magnification possible. But just like when you zoom in on something, you get a smaller field of view and the image becomes dimmer. So, if you have a couple of different eyepieces in your case, use the one with the biggest number. This is a big mistake everybody makes. They try to zoom in too much. Start with the lowest power and then work your way up. Now let's go outside and try a couple. Okay, so we're doing astronomy in the day. Well, yeah, you can do solar astronomy, but don't now. You need a special filter that goes over the end of your telescope, and that's beyond the scope, pardon the pun of this video, so do not point this at the sun. What we're doing now is we're trying to look at a tree, and we're trying to line up the finder scope with the main scope right here. So because, again, if you look through a telescope, it's like looking at the sky through a drinking straw. It's really hard to even find the moon without that low power wide field of view of either a finder scope or a red dot finder. So I've pointed the finder scope at the tree, and then I'll look in the eyepiece here and focus it until I see the tree. Now, if it's the same, great. If not, I'm going to recenter this until a chimney is a good target, until I find whatever the target is, and then I'm going to use these little screws on the finder scope to move the view here, left, right, up and down, until the crosshairs are centered on whatever my target is. And this is going to make astronomy a lot more fun. Now, what if your scope doesn't look like this? Hold on a second. It looks like this one, where the eyepiece is up by the top and the focuser is on the side of the tube. Then is what's called a reflector, or a Newtonian reflector. And this one, Isaac Newton invented the optical system, and then this guy in the early 70s, I think, invented the base system, John Dobson. So this is also called a Dobsonian Telescope. This was my second telescope. And this has a Telrad finder on it, which is a red dot. So you do the same thing. It's a little harder to see this one during the day, but you aim it at the tree, Then you look in the eyepiece, you move it around until the tree's in the middle, and then these are the little adjustment screws. Then you adjust this until the tree lines up with it. Now, the view is going to be sideways and upside down and all sorts of things. Doesn't matter, you're just trying to get centered. Okay, and remember, keep it well away from the sun. This is a refractor, this is a reflector. And there's one that uses both mirrors and lenses. You might have one of those too. Now, let's go back inside. It's cold out. Okay, so you've got your scope set up. You picked out a low power eyepiece. It might be the only eyepiece you have, and that's totally fine. And you got it outside. Put it out a couple minutes before you observe, about 30, 45, something like that. Let it cool down if it's cold outside so the optics aren't thermally distorted. That would be a good metal band name. Thermal distortion. Arrgh! And you got your finder scope lined up. Okay, everything's good. Now what? Well, wait till it's dark and clear. And then, well, you can look at clouds, but they're really boring. Trust me on that one. And then point it at something. If the moon's out, awesome. Venus is low in the southwest right now. You're probably not going to see a whole lot. But it actually will show a little phase. It's a little gibbous phase, so it's like a real fat half moon right now. So you can check that out. But point it at a star. Point it at anything you think is cool in the night sky, even though it might not be anything at first, and take a look through the telescope. Now, when you first look at things, it might be kind of subtle, to put it mildly. You might be like, wait, that's it? It takes a little while to get into the swing of things and to realize what you're seeing is a photon that's been traveling thousands, if not millions of years to reach your eye, which is really cool. And it takes practice to learn how to find things in the sky. Use apps, use books, use these video series. There's a lot of videos on YouTube talking about this too. But for now, just get the scope up and running and get some starlight through that. One more thing. People are always like, oh, how powerful is the telescope? And they usually refer to how much does it magnify. But with a telescope, not only does it magnify, but it gathers more light. So your eye, when it's fully dark adapted, at best is getting about 7 millimeters, that's how wide your pupil would be, of light in. This is an 80 millimeter lens. The telescope out in the yard, the white one, is a 102 millimeter lens, and in the little Canon looking one, that's a 250 millimeter mirror. So it's gathering a lot more light, and you can see much deeper into space with that, and you magnify it as well. People often ask also, what's the best type of telescope? And the answer is, whatever one you're using. So get out, get some starlight, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Clear skies.